The Shaman is one of the most versatile and honestly one of the most flavour-rich classes in Classic WoW. As the Horde's unique answer to the Alliance Paladin, the Shaman is often pictured as an elemental powerhouse, a master of earth, fire, water and air. You aren't just a soldier, you're a conduit for the primal forces of Azeroth, a warrior shielded by rotating spheres of lightning and guided by the spirits. In the community, the Shaman has a reputation for being the ultimate jack of all trades, but as the old saying goes, in these early levels you can often feel like a master of none. While other classes are locked into a single rigid role, you're expected to pivot between frontline brawler, a ranged caster and a vital healer on the fly. But here's the thing, that legendary flexibility comes at a significant cost during those early levels. In this video, we're looking past the elemental mastery montages to see what it actually feels like to level a Shaman from 1 to 20. We're diving into the mechanical logic of the class, the stationary nature of totems, and why the Shaman is arguably one of the most mana-hungry classes in the entire game. This is the next video in my early leveling series. If you're interested in the others, you'll find them in the playlist linked in the corner of the screen. Now let's get into it. When you roll a Shaman, you're usually chasing a very specific archetype. You anticipate being a battle mage, opening a fight with a heavy lightning bolt cast, only to immediately follow it with an instant earth shock and a flurry of melee strikes. You expect to control the battlefield with a forest of totems, providing a buff for every situation and a counter for every enemy. There's also an expectation of safety. Because you can wear a shield and have access to one of the strongest heals in the game, Healing Wave, you assume you'll be the self-sustaining hybrid that never has to fear a bad pull. You imagine yourself as an elemental force that can simply out-resource the world. But this is where the dream meets reality. The mechanical friction of the early game quickly trades that cinematic fantasy for a much grittier experience. The reality of levels 1 through 20 is that the Shaman is defined by short bursts of activity, followed by a long wait. Most of your actual impact happens in the first few seconds of a fight. You pull with a lightning bolt, drop some totems, and after that, your rotation mostly consists of waiting for your mana to tick back up while your auto attacks do the rest of the work. It's a gameplay loop defined by commitment. Unlike a mage or a hunter who can kite and react on the move, the Shaman is anchored to their totems. Once you've placed your base of operations on the ground, you are locked into that position. If the fight moves, you lose your investment. This makes the class feel very deliberate. You aren't reacting to the world, you're forcing the world to come to you. This is also where the Alliance Horde divide becomes very real. A Paladin at level 10 is already a walking tank. They're draped in mail armour from the jump, giving them a massive physical buffer against every pull. As a Shaman, you're stuck in leather until level 40. You may be using a shield, but you don't have the mitigation. Every hit you take is chunking your health bar significantly more than it would a Paladin's. You aren't out-tanking the world, you're surviving it by the skin of your teeth. Combined with the fact that you're anchored to one spot, you often feel much more vulnerable than a battle mage archetype suggests. And that leads us to the biggest hurdle of all, the blue bar. Mana is the Shaman's greatest enemy. Early spells are notoriously expensive, and if you're redropping totems after every single pull, you'll be bone dry before you've made a dent in your quest log. To stay efficient, you have to master resource conservation. Instead of running to the next mob and spending another chunk of mana to drop a new set of totems, you use a well-timed body pull or a ranged spell to bring the next enemy back to the radius of your existing totems. Think of your totems as an anchor. Your goal is to drop them in a central hub and then pull enemies into that circle. You're stretching your mana investment, making one cast work for 2 or even 3 kills. You might feel like you're covering twice the ground by pulling mobs back to your base, but you're actually saving yourself an entire mana bar's worth of recasting. You learn very quickly that in Classic, maximum damage and maximum efficiency are 2 very different things. The Shaman who moves with the most intent, keeping their totems stationary while they manage the pulls, is often the one who levels the fastest. Because you have the tools to heal yourself, your downtime is a constant balancing act. If you finish a fight with low health, you're faced with a choice. Do you spend your mana to heal up, or do you save that mana for the next pull and eat instead? If you rely purely on healing wave to top yourself off, you're going to spend half your journey sitting on the ground waiting for your mana to return. The goal is to reach a state of sustained momentum. This is where you decide how much damage you're willing to take versus how fast you want the mob to die. It's a trade-off between the safety of a shield or the speed of a staff, and finding that balance is what keeps you moving. Regardless of your gear, the trick is using first aid to recover health whenever possible, saving your precious mana exclusively for your spells. Unlike the priest who has spirit tap, the Shaman has to be incredibly stingy. If you're playing correctly, you should feel like you're constantly bouncing on a knife edge of resources. When it comes to your weapon imbues at these early levels, the choice is actually simpler than the talent trees make it look. You should level with Rockbiter for consistency. The reason is straightforward. Flame Tongue is a proc that relies on spell power to really scale. Since your gear at the early levels has almost 0 bonus spell power, those fire procs hit like wet noodles. Rockbiter weapon is the only tool in your kit that turns your base strength and agility into reliable guaranteed damage on every single swing. Once you've committed to Rockbiter, your choice of weapons becomes a momentum slider for your leveling experience. On one side you have the shield and fast one-hander, the old faithful approach. This is about pure stability. By maximising your armour and blocking with a shield, you take significantly less damage, which means you spend less mana on emergency heals. You'll kill mobs more slowly, but you'll finish every fight with a healthier blue bar and almost zero risks of a graveyard run. On the other side, you have a slow two-hand staff. This is the burst approach. Because Rockbite adds a flat amount of attack power, it's most effective when paired with a weapon that has a high top-end damage. The goal here is to end the fight in fewer, more impactful hits before the mob even has a chance to drain your life. You'll kill faster, but you'll feel that leather armour vulnerability much more often. Ultimately, you're choosing between outlasting the world or overpowering it. But regardless of which path you take, remember a Shaman is a slave to their weapon's item level. If you're still using a level 6 mace at level 14, no amount of Rockbite is going to save you momentum. Beyond just your buttons, there are a few specific traps that can derail your momentum in the early levels. And the most common is over-toteming. It's tempting to drop a strength of earth and a saving totem for every single mob, but if that mob dies in 15 seconds, the mana cost often outweighs the benefits. You have to learn which fights actually deserve a totem and which ones you can handle with just a weapon and imbue and a single shock. On the flip side, don't make the mistake of ignoring Stoneclaw Totem. New Shamans often forget Stoneclaw Totem exists, but in these early levels, your health pool is so small, dropping Stoneclaw to taunt a second mob while you finish the first is the difference between a controlled fight and a panic heal. It's the best tool for managing adds without burning your entire mana bar on emergency recovery. Finally, there's weapon speed mismanagement. It's a common mistake to pick a fast dagger, but Shaman leveling in early game is about front loading. Because your strategy relies on finishing fights quickly with as few swings as possible, you want the slowest, highest top end damage weapon you can find. The Staff of Orgrimmar, for example. A slower swing ensures that your Rockbiter enhanced hits deal a massive armour crushing chunk of the mob's health every time they land. Avoid these traps and you'll find that the Shaman grind isn't nearly as punishing as people say it is. The Shaman journey teaches you the logistics of utility. Between the unique world-spanning quests for each elemental totem and the constant need to manage your limited bag space for relics and reagents, you learn that preparation is half the battle. You aren't just a combatant, you're a manager of various systems. You also learn Resource Temperance. Between levels 1 and 20, Shamans are notorious for ooming if they're reckless. You learn that just because you have a spell doesn't mean you should cast it. Every shock and totem is a calculated gamble against your mana bar. This discipline extends to your spatial awareness. Because your power is tied to a stationary spot on the ground, your totems become a base of operations. But you learn the hard way that this base is fragile. A poorly placed totem acts as a global taunt for passing patrols, turning a controlled fight into a desperate scramble. Pulling mobs back to your anchor point teaches you to scan the environment and maintain a dedicated safe zone. Above all, the Shaman teaches you to be a generalist. It's the class that looks at a situation and asks, what does this fight need right now, rather than, what button do I spam next? You aren't just hitting a mob, you're solving a puzzle with the elements. Level 20 is the first major turning point in your journey. This is the moment the game changes completely, primarily because you unlock Ghost Wolf. A 40% movement increase at level 20 levels before any other class gets a mount. It's arguably the best leveling tool in the game. Reaching level 20 also brings a massive power spike in your combat rhythm. By now, your talent tree is finally deep enough to offer significant boosts to your melee crit or swing speed. If you're following the enhancement path, this is where you pick up two-handed axes and maces. It allows you to finally move away from caster staves and lean into the heavy-hitting weapons that actually define the spec. You stop feeling like a survivalist trying to make a staff work and start feeling like the true force of nature. But as big as level 20 feels, it's really just a primer for the holy grail of the Shaman experience. You are now on the direct path to level 30, where you unlock the explosive, high-roll chaos of Wind Fury, and level 40, where you finally trade your leather for mail armour. The early levels are a test of patience and discipline, but once you cross that level 20 threshold, you stop just managing the elements and start truly wielding them. The Shaman has a reputation for being the unstoppable hybrid, and in a way that's true, if you respect the mana bar. At least in the early game, it isn't a class for those who want a frantic, high-speed rotation. It's for those who enjoy a tactical satisfaction of a perfectly placed totem and a well-timed interrupt. Leveling a Shaman is a deliberate, resource-heavy experience that rewards patience and positioning. If your early journey felt like a struggle for mana, or if you felt the weight of every weapon upgrade, then you were playing it exactly right. Did your early Shaman experience match this tactical style, or did you find a way to break the mana efficiency mould? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.